and software solutions. Amor Maclang, co-founder, International Digital Economies Association and chairman of Digital Pilipinas. And Jackie Young, co-founder of TransLink Capital. Taking us through this conversation, playing the role of the moderator, is Mr. Damien Bruce, Senior Partner, McKinsey & Company from Melbourne. Over to you, Mr. Damien Bruce.
Thank you, Terence. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. We're talking about the evolution of smart cities. And I found the word evolution to be quite interesting because it's been over 15 years since IBM shared their concept of smarter cities with us. And since then, technologies and the way they're used have evolved significantly. So we've moved from city leaders globally thinking about technology as just a way to deliver citizen services more efficiently to a fundamentally different way of engaging with citizens. Indeed, our smartphones, if not our biometrics, our handprints, are the new keys to the city. And so across many quality of life areas, be it the quality of the air that we breathe, the time we spend in transit, the incidence of crime, there's so many ways in which technology is playing an increasing role in our cities. So we're going to explore this concept in the next 30 or 40 minutes or so in three themes. We're going to firstly talk about the potential for smart cities, particularly in the Malaysia context, so the role that Malaysia can play in leading ASEAN on this topic. Secondly, we're going to hear what are the great and exciting best practices that we see around the world, which cities really excite us. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about the enablers that make the smart city concept come to life. So we have four fantastic panelists to help us do that. I won't reintroduce them, but let's get straight into it on this first theme of the potential of smart cities and the aspiration we should have for Malaysia. And I'm going to start with you, Shyn, if it's okay. As someone that's spent a ton of time around technology, and I don't want to pigeonhole you on that, but let me start with that foundational question of just what makes a city smart?
Thank you, Damien, for that question. And it's a great question because I think when you think about smart cities, the first thing you think about is technology, right? You think about hardware that's tracking movements. You think about technology that is tracking energy usage for optimization, and you think about all these different tech gadgets. But fundamentally, if you take a step back about what really makes a city smart, is really about how we can develop economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable communities and cities for our people. So whether it's how we power people to live, how we power people to work, and how people to thrive. Particularly after COVID, you see that the way people work and the way people live is very different. So what exactly is being smart? It's about creating an environment that will allow people to live their best lives, to live optimally, where they can combine what they feel passionate about professionally to how they prefer to live, and where they like to spend their time, whether with their families or in their habits, right? So technology really is only an enabler. So a smart city, so in my definition, is really about how we are putting people in the core center of what makes a city tick, how you can move from the old definition of cities being production economic centers to actually hybrid centers where people can just revolve their entire lives around a city. And then I think that, to me, is fundamentally what really makes a city smart, how you can create optimal environments for people, and then using technology to be able to power that.
Okay. So it's not a great place to start. It's not just about the technology. Maybe, do you want to pick up that thread, Mahadhir? What do you see as the financial and the non-financial impacts and potential for smart cities in Malaysia?
I think when we look at this, and just taking on the point by Shyn, the thing about smart cities, or now as they call digital cities as well, was very much the advanced use of technologies, data sharing, I think collaboration, and how should we put this? Participation by the community into what we do and how the city reacts to providing more services and things like that. So what results from that, the non-financial side, would be an improved services, improved lifestyle, and more targeted the kind of services that you do and provide to a certain groups of demographics or community that they can enjoy, as opposed to others who are actually not needing something like that. So I'm alluding to something a bit sensitive here is the targeted subsidies or whatever it is. It all depends on the data that we consume, we produce, and we circulate back into the system, where then that particular city or that particular community becomes smarter. And therefore, the kind of services that are provided directly and targeted to them is meant for them. It's not one broad brush that you swipe and everyone needs it or everyone gets it or something like that. I think that what would be something non-financial that is quite apparent in terms of the benefits of smart cities. But the financial side of things, again, based on the data that we have, you are looking at lowering operating cost in terms of how you manage cities, in terms of how you actually consume energy, use electricity, use energy, and actually use the kind of services. You pay as you need. You consume as you would actually feel like using it, as opposed to something that you do for the rest. So we can elaborate a lot more on that, but I think the two would be the biggest ones that we see primarily within the financial and non-financial side of things.
And just a quick follow-up, and then I'd love more your thoughts on the similar topic. Do you measure the financial, Mahadhir, do you measure the financial and the non-financial benefits in a holistic way? Sorry, Mahadhir, this question follow-up to you. All these benefits, financial and non-financial, do you measure those and track all of those benefits in the way you do?
I would say so. The thing about this is that the moment you have the data, then definitely it's something that you have to measure. Otherwise, it means nothing. It's just basically, it's just collection of more data and all that. The thing about that is that for you to be able to respond to it and to devise new interventions, new programs, or new targeted, packages that you would like to give to these people, that depends on the data that you have. So the measurements would be something critical that you must have before you actually continue to do so or discontinue to do things that you feel is not meant to do that or is not gathering and producing the impact that you intended for that to happen.
Thank you. Amor, what are your views of the potential of smart cities and Malaysia's role across ASEAN?
How is this? Thank you. So two things, right? How do we define smart cities in the context of us in the global majority? So I think that's very important because how you would interpret smart cities in Singapore would be very different from how you would interpret it, for example, in Indonesia or in the Philippines. I wanted to zero in on a particular facet of what we're focusing on in the Philippines or in Indonesia or even in other regions like, say, Africa or even Brazil, which is public transport. And for us, what makes a city smart is the ease with which people can actually navigate, right, in a sustainable manner. And we all know, I think, that one of the notorious things we have in both Jakarta and in the Philippines is our legendary traffic. Now, looking to Malaysia's leadership, especially over the next 18 months. So I've been very vocal in all of my talks, the most recent one being in Hong Kong, about the role of Malaysia. We look to Malaysia leading up to its chairmanship in ASEAN 2025 to provide us not just funding, frameworks, but an enabling environment that could help develop our startup ecosystems, particular to smart cities. And I specifically am hoping we can have more exchanges on the electric vehicle ecosystem build out. So I'm going to leave it at that, and maybe we can discuss that later. Thank you.
The threat of different countries being at different places and having different interpretations, we'll come back to that in the second. I think it's a fascinating thing, but I do want to hear, Jackie, your thoughts of the impact and the aspiration we should have around employment as a metric. Do smart cities attract high-tech employees, or do they just drive a wave of automation and job loss? To put some two extremes on the table.
Yes. So the way that TransLink Capital looking into the smart city, mainly from two areas. One is a smart mobility. So we invest in Beam, the blue scooter that you see on the street here. We also invest in the car sharing company. The other one is the sustainability. For example, just a simple recycling, right? How do you use the AI to help recycling? And all of those are really enhancing the life quality of people in the city. Unfortunately, adoption of the technology, people need to transform their skill. So on the employment side, certain sector will be impacted. And there's a joke talking about ChatGPT. We thought we invented AI so we can enjoy life and making the point. But actually, now we have to do all of those hard work, the iron, cooking the food, doing the ironing, doing the laundry, and have ChatGPT writing the point for you. So that's a technology will evolve, and the employment also need to evolve. The other good example is that we invest in a company called LineSpot. It's a cleaning robot. You can see that in the airport, in the subway station. And the average worker of the cleaning industry is like 65. But the operator of the robot, actually, when we talk to them, they are very proud because now they upscale now. They don't really need to do the clean themselves. They can operate the robot to do the hard work for them.
Terrific. So we have, it's not just about the technology. There's financial and non-financial benefits. There's great role for Malaysia playing in a large way across Asia, and there's a need to transform. It's going to have impact on jobs. So there's a big aspiration, and it's a complex and sort of related aspiration. Let's move to the second theme, which is, therefore, where do we see some best practices emerging globally and regionally in progressing and capturing that benefit? So I'd love to hear from all of you, actually, but maybe Amor, we start with you on this one, of just what use cases really excite you, what cities really excite you globally in terms of what they're doing in this space?
So we have a very interesting perspective because in the International Digital Economies Association, we have 30 countries in our ecosystem, primarily representing the global majority from South America to Africa, to India, to ASEAN, even as far as Central Asia. And I'll once again zero in on where the problems lie. Remember, we had this discussion, where the problems lie or where the opportunities are. So aside from the mobility issue, we have a very palpable problem, and this might be of interest to Shyn because we were discussing this over lunch, is the provenance, for example, of land titles, right? So in the Philippines, for one, we are hoping to have more technologies coming from around Southeast Asia that would allow us to track, that would allow us to create trackable provenance. Say, for example, for transactions, the use of blockchain, the use of smart contracts. And why this is important is within ASEAN, 2 of the largest blockchain and also token crypto users in the entire world come from our region. That would be Vietnam and also the Philippines. The third one being Nigeria, who's also part of our ecosystem. I wish there was actually more opportunities to use these technologies that are being used copiously for the gaming industry and applying it to the recurring smart cities problem. So I take exception to Vietnam. I take exception to, and I was recently in Hong Kong. We have work stream with the Hong Kong government. And Shenzhen, Hangzhou, so aggressive when it comes to smart cities development. And I have a special interest in Malaysia. Like I said, we look to you over the next 18 to 24 months to really propel not just Malaysia, but ASEAN overall in the bigger digital economy. So I have to say I'm very ASEAN focused. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you one follow-up before I turn to Jackie and the other panelists on this question. Are there specific areas where you see Malaysia stepping into that opportunity? particular use cases within the city environment that just really excite you and say, maybe it is just mobility and some of it, but is there anything else that you'd really push
Well,
towards?
in general, I was having a discussion with Norman of Cradle. It's in the startup development ecosystem. So listen, the last thing that I want to see is a lopsided development in the startup ecosystem wherein one country will predominate another, right? This week, I will be in Bangkok upon the behest of the Luxembourg government, who decided they're going to invest in Southeast Asia startups. So we'll all be in Bangkok. Now, why do we have to wait for, really appreciative of Loft, but why do we have to look for Luxembourg? Maybe Malaysia can invest in Southeast Asia in our startup ecosystems, given the fact that we have the same problems, right? Look, if I don't say anything, Mr. Aziz doesn't say anything, we look like I could look Malaysian and he can look Filipino. Same with Indonesia, and our problems are the same. So we hope that with KL20, and that's why I'm very enthusiastic, and I've been messaging Mr. Aziz at odd hours of the night, and I said, please lead us in this digital ecosystem revolution, and you will have the Philippines as one of your strongest partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Amor. Let's go through our other panelists. Again, I'll step back to that first question. Which cities or which applications of technology and behavioural change really excite you? Jackie, you've invested in across the US, across China. Just what are your thoughts? What cities excite you?
Well, maybe I can give a few examples. And a smart city requires the government, the citizen, and technology to work all together. One single city has done everything correctly. I can give a few examples, and those applications are excited. For example, I just visited Phoenix, Arizona a few weeks ago, and it has been the first time since maybe 10 plus years. Then you see Waymo's autonomous driving robotaxi passing by, and you see there's no driver, there's no human on the driver's seat. But that's a heavy technology investment. Google spent billions of dollars to make it happen. That's one example. The other example is in, say, Tokyo. For example, the recycle behavior that the citizen is following. They know exactly what plastic, they know to turn the cap off when they depose the plastic bottle, because the cap cannot be recycled the same way. And it's a training of the citizen, it's a government promotion. The last example I want to give is today, if you go to Beijing and if you use their mobile app, their traffic light signal is connected with your mobile app now. So you know exactly when the light will turn green. It gives you the seconds to come down. And those are the very, very heavy fundamental infrastructure investment, but gradually that's happening.
That's pretty surreal. Certainly very different where I'm from in Australia, but maybe Shyn Yee, and then I'll come to you, Mahadhir, on this. What cities really excite you or applications?
Yeah, so I think a little known fact, PropertyGuru, our data business was actually born out of Malaysia. So I think what has been very encouraging for me to see is this realization that with data and technology, you can just improve the quality of decision making, particularly in urban design and urban planning. So a lot of the partners that we work with in Malaysia, whether it's government agencies, banks, valuation companies, developers, what they actually do is recognize that the data that we capture and all the third-party data partners that we work with actually allow us to derive some very intelligent insights about where people used to live, how they're migrating, where they want to live, how much they're willing to pay, and then we layer on that mobility data, payment data, to be able to derive location intelligence. So we've been able to advise whether it's telco companies or whether it's policymakers around what kind of policies they need to put in to be able to influence the desired behaviors. And because we have the marketplace, we can draw a direct correlation between the policy announcement, how it influences behavior, and what kind of intervention is required. So while we talk a lot about trying to kick off, but actually in many parts of the Malaysian economy, there's already a realization that there's that potential, and we're already working with some partners to do that. And I'm very energized by just the sheer understanding of the potential of what can be done right at the doorstep. So I'll give you a concrete example, like Sunway City. So they're developing a 15-minute city where within the 15-minute walk, everything is underpass, sheltered. There is the world's first electric bus rapid transit system. And within 15 minutes, you have medical centers, universities, residential, university residential, hotels, leisure, even an assisted living product, which is very imperative for our economies where we have aging population issue. So that is extremely smart. And then using technology, understanding the people, and creating a 15-minute city is already happening at our doorstep. And I find that very, very exciting.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the theme of the depth and the quality of the data is almost the rate limiter on how much you can do in any of these cities.
It's literally just whatever, it's just how much you can imagine, and then you can make the data tell you what you want to know.
Interesting. Mahadhir, your final thought on which cities inspire you, or which ones from a Malaysia lens you really look to learn from?
I don't profess to say that I've been to a bunch of cities, but for the cities that I've been to, I think it's kind of hard to actually name one city that has everything, but there's always pockets of services within the city. For example, you go to Tokyo and then you see the train system and how accurate as far as the timing is concerned, and like you said, you can make and informed decisions along the way. How do I plan to get from point A to point B on time? I can tell you to almost the exact minute when I'll knock on the door to actually be at the office or at the house or whatever it is. And there's aspects of, say, waste management. Barcelona would be one of the big, I think, example for that. And there are a bunch of other cities in China as well that are developing even more futuristic, I think, services using drone delivery and things like that. Things that maybe on different sides of the world would not have thought of or would not have dared to actually deploy. So again, naming one city would be unfair, but I think a bunch of services that are being created today can be formed into that particular city that we aspire to have. Having said all that, I think what is apparent was the fact that there are no two cities that are alike or the same. It depends very much, like Amor mentioned, very much on the locality and what is needed for that particular city, and then the kind of services or the kind of smart services that you would like to deploy there. And then it depends very much on the set of data that is available that people are willing to share, to create, and how does the government respond to whatever that they have. Then I think it forms this so-called, I think, utopian smart city, if you may, to actually achieve. It remains something that you chase as opposed to something that you have achieved today. But the model that you have is a combination of many things. Societies, I think, conform to different ways of thinking, the cultures, and that influences how we actually define what is smart and what we model ourselves after. So Malaysia, if I may touch a bit, has actually undergone this exercise very much from a township management perspective first, before looking at the services. So it's more inward looking, if anything, managing the process or the work of managing the communities. What sort of parking services, what sort of traffic management services that we hope to be able to provide. And then from then on, the moment it eases up the management of that within the city council, and that's where we look at the services coming from outside. Whereas today, I think the smart cities that are being developed today or being defined today is very much on what sort of services that the community would like to have. And this, I think, has given rise, and which I give credit to Singapore with, I think, GovTech, where you make available the data sets that you can build and anyone can build services on. So that would be an additional model that Malaysia looks at, something that we can copy, something that we can emulate, and something that we can also build as the new thing that we are doing. On our side, having spoken about other cities and all that, another side to this thing, there are three main components to smart city as Malaysia sees it. One, very much on the energy side. So we have to have complete coverage of energy throughout Malaysia. Second thing is communications. I think we have gone into the conversations of 5G and hopefully not too long into the 6G. The third part is what we are doing at the Ministry of Digital right now is very much on personal data protection and coming, I think this June, if I'm not mistaken, on the data sharing between government and also private sector as well. So we are very much, MDEC itself, very much a big part of that, together with the rest of the Ministry of Digital, to be able to do that while we build the communication infrastructure, while we build the energy grid and requirements for us to be able to do this. So again, we are taking it from an infrastructure first and then city services first before we get to that.
It's very well articulated. It's not, we have lots of sources of inspiration globally, but the answer is very local on our context and what we want to build. We're not going to build a NEOM somewhere in Asia. We are going to improve the cities that we've got towards that outcome.
We have built Putrajaya first, so let's capitalize
Maybe you'll
on
catch
that.
them. Maybe just one final question on this theme for you, Shyn Yee, which is just there's been a real advent in you talked about data, analytic technologies in the last 18 months, obviously, with Gen AI and predictive analytics. How are you seeing cities respond to that step change in capability on an AI perspective?
I think the first thing that we all have to accept is that the pace of change, particularly with generative AI, is just going to quicken. And we've seen how technology and post-COVID, the way we work particularly has shifted so much. So what we've seen in the West, for example, like the emptying commercial buildings and low occupancy, that's something that we're not exactly seeing in this part of the world yet, but it's something that we're doing a lot of research and analysis in-house to understand, is this something that we have to prepare for? So I think, first of all, the acceptance that technology is going to change the way we work and the way we live drastically, and the pace of change is going to quicken. That's important. And I think there's data points around us everywhere, right? It's how you capture that, how you capitalize that, and you need a lot of creativity and investment into determining what the goodness that you can extract out of the data. And then, for example, with AI, whether it's with digital twinning technologies, for example, it makes scenario planning a lot quicker, or whether it's with predictive data models to be able to predict future climate risks, like extreme heat, flash floods, rising sea levels. You don't want to build a city today that might be partially submerged in water 50 years from now. So you can have it flush with the best technology, but if it's partially submerged in water, that's going to be pretty useless.
It feels like we're heading that way today with the
with the thunderstorm. So I think definitely with the data and with the AI, the quickening pace of change, and also the cost of experimenting is also a lot lower than it used to be. So I think that actually is a lot of recipe for us to do a lot of cool things and test out in fenced environments to be able to experiment and reiterate quickly as well.
Thank you. So let's move on to the third theme, because I think we've talked about the potential and the aspiration. We've talked about where we can be inspired, but with the appropriate caveats around sort of having to be local first and infrastructure forward. The third theme of how do we then enable a more rapid acceleration towards the opportunity? And I might start with you, Jackie, on this one. There are sort of these three layers that have to operate together to make a city smart: the technology layer, the adoption layer, the usage layer, the application layer. Which layer requires the most investment to get right?
Well, from investment point of view, or from dollar amount point of view, technology layer, infrastructure layer, that's definitely take the most investment amount. But from a city, from a government point of view, actually this may not be something that city want to do. Instead, on the adoption layer, I think this is something city can easily do. Just give an example. I heard that Malaysia, they are providing the unified QR code payment. Right? Instead of the different company has a different QR code payment on the counter, now you have a single QR code payment. All of the wallet, all of the payment application will follow that. That's an improvement of life cycle, improve of life quality. You don't need to bring a different payment. You just, the merchant will be simplified. The other example is on the scooter, right? If you do a better planning, the adoption can be getting much better. I live in Taipei, and the share bike has been very, very successful in Taipei, in Taiwan. And it's not a heavy investment, but it could have a long-term impact on the society, on the smart city application.
So, Amor, one of the obvious questions to help with that adoption is, you know, building on your strengths that you have. And you made the building on your strengths at a city level. You made the point before in our last discussion that every city has a different answer and comes from a different perspective. If you look at Malaysia and some of the cities in Malaysia, where is that strength, that capability? Maybe it's fintech, maybe it's... Where can we build on to accelerate, particularly in Malaysia?
It's actually not technology. The answer is not technology. It's chutzpah. I don't know how else to put it, right? Listen, ASEAN has although we are the fastest growing digital economy in the world, most definitely for fintech, because we have had the most problems and therefore the most opportunities, right? But despite that, what we've seen, and this is very apparent to me when we were in Europe last year, when we were in the UK together. For the most part, the global north looks to ASEAN as a market. And that's probably something that I look to Malaysia to reverse in terms of the narrative. ASEAN, Malaysia, whether it's Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, could be a hub for the creation of relevant technologies that can be pipelined in the global majority. We are young. What is our strength? We are young. Just look at us here in ASEAN, right? At an average age of 30 years old or so, the world can look to us for innovative ideas. But I think what's lacking up to now has been an enabling environment that not only looks at city or country focus, but rather an ASEAN-wide focus. So I was very happy when I heard the Prime Minister mention a 3 billion ringgit, I hope I'm not misquoting, a 3 billion ringgit, and it was entitled an ASEAN Initiative Fund. I was speaking to the CEO of Cradle, who said, we will develop a Malaysia and ASEAN fund. So I think under the leadership of Malaysia, under ASEAN, we will be able to collectively as a region reverse this perception that we are a market, but rather we could be an innovator and contributor to world economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amor. Mahadhir, what do you see as the biggest barriers to capturing the opportunity, including the one that Amor has painted for Malaysia and the region?
Well, and I think this is not unique to Malaysia, but whenever we talk about innovation, we talk about smart cities and other parts of the technology revolution, if you may, is that the regulations are always playing catch up to that. I think having an adaptive regulatory framework or an environment where the government is embracing innovation and technology would be a good start. Again, if we can solve that, and I think we can solve a lot of the problems happening in different parts of the world as well. We can do it within certain localities, communities, or certain cities, but from a government perspective, that requires a massive exercise to have that as one of the challenge. Second part is, again, when we talk about investment just now, I think investment on the talents is something that pays back with a much shorter gestation period. You train somebody 4 or 5 years, they will get a job, they'll pay the taxes, and the government gets back that particular investment. But when you're investing into an infrastructure, just like Malaysia has, I think the model, the business model that you have to land on to make sure that there's a return on that investment and that the business is sustainable for the much longer term, for you to be able to let people enjoy that, for the business to be able to profit from that, and yet things for that to be beneficial to the society as we intend to do. So this would be the kind of things that I see beyond the normal challenges for us to do that. It's a lot easier to actually force things onto people, depending on the government. I know Malaysia experienced that. It's a lot easier to get people to adopt technology. Our parents had troubles with the handphones before this. I can only use that to take photos, make calls, or send text messages, and that's about it. But when COVID came, we enforced these particular requirements for everyone to check in and check out and using QR codes and all these payments. And somehow or other, everyone just turned, okay, let's go and do it. Let's not worry so much about sharing data or whatever it is, because the situation calls for it, because the government forces you to actually do that. So adoption of technology, I think it's quite an easy part for this particular part of the world, as opposed to, say, Europe, for example, a bit more liberal on that side. But there's other part of the business model. How do we sustain this? How do we actually regulate this? Do we allow the markets to dictate themselves and define what it is? Or do we help and facilitate this? I think that's the challenge where both the private sector and also the public sector has to find what is the balance and find where they can have that particular conversations to continue forward with this.
Thank you, Mahadhir. I think it's a great point around the public-private collaboration, the need for the whole ecosystem to push in the same direction. I know we're short on time. I'll ask Shyn Yee perhaps the final question to you, which is just picking up on the thread that Mahadhir was talking about. How do cities stay smart? What's the enduring answer here, as opposed to a single strategy that is out of date a year from now?
Thanks for asking that. So I would have to go back to some of my product management experience and wisdom. I think a city can only stay smart if it stays centered on the people. So in typical software product management is about being crystal clear about the user problem and making sure that you're solving for the most painful problems. So if you stay centered on what can solve the everyday problems of people in order for them to live well, to work smart, and to be able to thrive in their lives, then you start identifying problems that need to be solved, and then looking at what the best technologies are to be able to enable to solve those problems. So to me, smart cities can stay smart if they stay focused on the problems that need to be solved, and then being able to experiment quickly and reiterate quickly, so that you're not too hung up on one technology, you're not too hung up on one solution, but you just continuously look at how best to leverage on technology to solve people's problems within cities.
Terrific. It's a wonderful call to action to end on. I'll thank all of our panelists for their contributions, and the future is bright for Malaysia and smart cities. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, panel. We'd like to invite everyone to kindly pose for a quick photo to wrap up the session. And they were our final panel, ladies and gentlemen, for the day here at the Founders Stage. As we look forward to seeing you at day 2 tomorrow at the Plenary Hall, we do invite you to kindly enjoy the hospitality of all our exhibitors here at the Founders Stage. Do also take note that tomorrow we will be starting bright and early with our first session at 8:30 a.m. scheduled to have our guests arrive by that time. So please kindly join us, and we will be seeing you at day 2 for KL20 Summit 2024. Please do have a great day ahead, and if you're heading home, drive home safe. Thank you for being a part of day 1. Let's look forward to a sensational day 2, everyone. Thank you.